Hello and welcome to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
Before we introduce who our guest is today, Joe's going to remind us of our show's purpose.
Well, our show's purpose is to unite people that are looking for great opportunities of service through stories of amazing service. And we get to have really great people on. We get to hear about really inspirational organizations. And then what's really fun is that we get to wrap Rotary into all of this, because it usually is the linchpin in a lot of these stories. So hope everyone enjoys.
So our guest today is Gayla Holmgren. She is our second time returning guest through Preschool for Success. And we're excited to learn more on how the progress for this nonprofit has been going.
Updates
Galore. So enjoy this show, and we'll be back. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
Before we dive into who our guest is today, Chad is going to remind us of our show sponsor.
We want to thank Russell Hampton Companies for sponsoring the show, #1 printer for Rotary in the country. If you're watching online, you can see some of the stuff they sent us. We got tumblers, cutting board, and they can print anything. So whether it's some Rotary gear or your business needs some help, check out russellhampton.com.
I'm going to make sure not quit my day job, because Vanna White is not in my future. So we are so happy to have on our guest, and I will introduce her to you. We have Gayla Holmgren on again. This is her second round with us. Gayla she's a part of Preschool for Success, and she's also a member of the St. Cloud Rotary Club. Gayla, welcome back.
Thank you.
How have you been?
I've been real good. Very busy, but good.
Good. And for our listeners who are tuning in for the first time and had not listened to your previous show, can you remind them where you live?
I'm from St. Cloud, Minnesota. North of the city's about 60 miles.
Excellent. And then what's your role with Preschool for Success?
I am the co-chair along with Gary Marsden. And it's our third year. We've been co-chairing it. We have a leadership team of about 12, 15 people. And we've been actively planning now for 3 years and planning now for our fourth.
Excellent. It is very exciting.
Well, I mean, I think what we're having you on the show for is to give us a little update on how things are going.
We should get some background though first for people that haven't been.
I was going to say, I think that it would be
do background
like
again.
a friendly remander for our listeners, those who maybe had not heard about Preschool for Success. Let's give them, a briefing on what Preschool for Success is.
Preschool for Success is a free preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds in the St. Cloud area. It's a partnership between the school district and St. Cloud Rotary, and we have other community partners too. And we provide right now 7 classrooms for preschool for disadvantaged children, for children in poverty, homeless children, English language learners, children who wouldn't normally have access to preschool, in order to give them a heads up on kindergarten and that they start school kindergarten ready. So it's a great partnership with the community as well as the school district. The St. Cloud Rotary puts in about 50% of the costs, and the district picks up the other 50%. In addition to the preschool, we have boots on the ground, we call it, with Rotary, ways to get actively involved in the classroom and with this community of people. And we have community events also for the families.
It's so wonderful. Like, I remember when we had you on that first go around and hearing about this program itself, and then the residual impacts that it has as well. It's just, it makes so much sense.
Well, maybe talk briefly about some of the statistics around children that have preschool exposure versus not. I think that's a really powerful statistic.
Okay. Well, we're told that 90% of a children's brain is developed by age 5, 90%. So kids that start behind really never catch up. And right now, 35,000 kids in Minnesota start kindergarten and are not ready for kindergarten. They do not have the skills. And we are only 37th in the nation for providing preschool for 4-year-olds. You know, we pride ourselves on education in Minnesota, and that's a horrible statistic to be 37th in the nation. Another important statistic is that for every dollar invested in preschool, there's $16 returned to the taxpayer. So there's an economic value. And also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that the most effective strategy for a growth of a community is having effective preschool programs. Some great statistics that show not only the value of it, but also to the child and the family, but also to the community.
Really great statistics. Kind of puts things into perspective as well, where you're like, oh, you know, it's why has it been viewed the way that it has, and the importance of it has not been in place. Whereas now you can show the statistics and literally go, no, hold on a second. This is proven time over time statistically that if a child goes through preschool, here are the impacts it has down the line.
We call it an achievement gap, but we've been told many times by educators that it's really a lack of access to opportunity gap, that they don't have the opportunity. And one of my favorite statistics, and one of the studies that I think is most valuable, was a study that was done in Michigan called the Perry study. It was tracked kids for 40 years, and so into their adult years. And they found the children had, first of all, an 80% graduation rate compared to the 60% other control group, and that they had earned higher incomes, had a higher graduation rate, and had better health. That's a long-term study showing the value of preschool. And we're trying to do some gathering of data too. Well, we're only in our 3rd year, but we're gathering data to see how well the kids are doing as they enter kindergarten, how they compare to other children. So that's an important aspect of it too.
It's such an interesting thing too, Gayla, that you think about like when you enter kindergarten and how there's almost like this level playing field more or less for most students, right? Everyone's coming in, but you think of that step just before then and the disparity. You've got kids that, have preschool, you have kids that haven't, you've got kids that are in difficult situations at home, you have kids that are in great situations. So like that disparity is huge. Now, how do you see preschool playing out kind of into the future? Like I see preschool for success being this big spotlight on something. And does the school district do school districts begin to offer, preschool as a standardized piece instead of kindergarten being the starting block? Is preschool the starting block? I mean, where do you see that in the future?
Well, many states have universal preschool, and some of the bordering states to Minnesota do. We don't at this time, and it's a major investment because it's not just providing classrooms, teachers and paraprofessionals, but it's also having the buildings to offer, preschool to all students. But we do have what's called BPK funding. That's funding for students in poverty, students with learning disabilities, homeless children, and basically the students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so the state does indicate that we actually a mandate that we should provide preschool for those children, but they don't allocate enough funds. And so like in St. Cloud, when we started this program, we had 200 kids that qualified based on state guidelines, but the state did not provide enough funds for those children. And that's why great part of the reason we started this. Now, one of our huge goals is to work with the legislature to increase the funding not necessarily now for universal funding, but to at least increase funding so the kids that qualify have access to preschool. And right now we're working with Senator Eric Putnam, and we're just in the beginning stages of forming an advocacy group to work with him on increasing funding. And also we've worked with other, we had Capitol Day at the Rotary Capitol Day last year. We met with legislators there, and Senator Putnam also has staff that's doing research and meeting with people from other states to see how they're doing it. So that's the big goal, because Rotary's not going to be doing, this is a signature project, which usually lasts 3 to 5 years. Our long-term goal is to have a sustainability plan. And so that's what we want to do, is at least fund the kids who qualify based on the state guidelines.
I don't understand that. Like 16-to-1 payback, like how do you not be able to go? So when we invest $1 here, we get 16 here. So
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like
It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
it is. Well, it seems like it's such a no-brainer because it has such a disproportionate impact on those that otherwise would be left behind, right? Like it's so disproportionate in terms of creating a level playing field of opportunity. And I mean, I think that we can all get on board with whatever your leaning is politically, or however you are fiscally, if you're conservative or more liberal with that. Like if you are giving access to people on a disproportionate level through dollars that have huge return in the long run, and you have the data, I don't understand how, this doesn't resonate harder, and it actually speaks to the importance of your organization is to continue being that megaphone for it, because it does seem to be catching on. I mean, even from the last time that we had you on, the program seems to have exploded. So tell us a little bit about that growth.
Well, my understanding is that throughout District 5950, the governor has asked each club to come up with some kind of program to fund preschool. And that's different for one district to another. And one, it was providing a summer school for those kids so they could start kindergarten a little readier without having had preschool themselves. Another, it was offering scholarships for kids. Another one, it was another district there's a copay even with the funding, and some parents can't even afford the copay. So one district picked up the copay for students in their particular district. So the programs have varied, and they're really in initial stages. But really, John Bodette would be a great person to talk about that, because he's kind of overseeing that with the district. But a lot of activity, every district is doing something, and in beginning stages.
It's funny. I got to make a mental note. Around 80 episodes is when we start to just have everybody else back on the show.
Yeah.
Because we had John on the show too, right?
Yeah, we did.
I mean, because it seems to be about a year. Anyway.
How do you help other people in the district as they're starting their programs?
Well, the District 5950 webpage has a lot of resources. The research, some of the research we've done, it's got questions to ask partnership school districts when you meet with them, how to promote your program. John Bodette has put on a great webpage there, great resources on the webpage to get started in a program. And so I would suggest people take a look at that. We helped with putting some of that together, but it's a great resource.
Can you tell us how many students you're serving now? I might have missed that. Because you had said the need was 230 initially, right?
Yeah. We have 96 kids in the program this year, and we had 96 kids last year. And the first year was, when I spoke to you last time, was a difficult year coming off the pandemic, and we had a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. So we only had 26 kids, and then we did lose 4. We didn't provide busing, which was a major issue. So over 200 kids so far. Now, right now, I think we had about 40 kids on the waiting list in 2 of our elementaries. And so what we're going to do is provide a summer school for them, or the option of a summer school if they're able to provide their transportation to get there, because there's no busing in the summer. So we've made a big dent in the waiting list, but our goal is to have no waiting list, and that's probably going to take help with the legislature.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's so cool.
What has been, as you've tried to get to you mentioned the legislator, but what else is some of the biggest barriers to get that wait list eliminated? Is it strictly funding, or is there more infrastructure involved too?
No, it's buildings too. I think we could have done another classroom this year, but the school district didn't have classrooms. And our first year, we did offer classrooms off-site, and that was part of our struggle because we didn't have busing, and so we didn't have kids signing up, and we didn't have kids making it to school. So yeah, this getting busing and then having buildings to provide the classrooms is a big challenge, in addition to funding.
Well, can you remind? Maybe it's just me who needs the friendly reminder, but can you remind us, like, how did this come to fruition originally 3 years ago?
Well, we have, it's a glorified book club. We call it a night of erudition every once in a while in the club. And it's like a study group on a topic. And it was the year, I think, that equity, inclusion, and that was a goal for the district, or maybe it was a national goal. And so we did a reading. Some of us read one book, some read another book. We read some articles. We had Eric Putnam come and talk about Douglas Davis, because he's kind of an expert in him. And out of that discussion came a concern about the achievement gap, or the lack of opportunity gap in our community, and the graduation rate and in our community, especially with the minority population. And a real passion arose that our community needed better than this, that we needed to do something about it. And our Rotarians are passionate.
Yes, they are.
So we are. And so out of that, we decided to form a group, and just about everyone that was in that study group, book group, joined it. And within 9 months, we had a temporary program, or initial program set up, met with our school district. One of the real valuable things too, because if we were going to make it a signature project, we needed total club support. And so we take it to a vote to the entire club. So we had the school district come and present on the need and some of the research and what a preschool program looks like, and what their needs were. And then we did some more talking in groups to the Rotarians, and we took it to a vote. And then we had the entire club vote, overwhelmingly, like 90% to pursue this as a signature project. So it came all out of a book club.
That's pretty cool.
A study group.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how, when you start to put great minds together, that you can come up with something like this, Preschool for Success, or any other sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
We'll never let anybody tell you that a few motivated individuals can't
Right.
change the world.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that ever has.
Yeah.
It was an eclectic group too. We had a couple CEOs of businesses, and one in particular, my co-chair, Gary Marson, was just terribly passionate about, we just can't tolerate this. The impact on the community, on economics, to these kids not have preschool. We can't have that in our community. We had nonprofits, we had some educators, but it was a very eclectic group of generation-wise and career-wise, but they were united in their commitment.
What are some of the barriers that you're coming across yet still to this day?
Well, busing is, still busing in classrooms, really,
Okay.
because you might have a classroom, but it's not where the students live.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
And then busing is very, very expensive. It would be great to have busing in the summer for that summer program we want to do, but it's terribly expensive. It's totally cost prohibitive for us to fund that. So classrooms and busing are probably the biggest ones besides funding.
Okay.
You had mentioned that you work with non-English speaking families. How do you connect with them, and what have you guys done to really engage with non-English speaking families?
Yeah, that is a challenge, and that's one thing with clubs starting programs. I think I'm going off screen here. Starting programs is it's not necessarily that these populations are going to run to you. Oh, good, a preschool. They need to be kind of educated too on the value first that the program exists and the value and why they need to participate, especially those minority populations, the immigrants. And so we did things like at Summertime by George, our summer concert event. We had booths and we had Somali leaders and other leaders in those booths to talk to students and families. We had them sign up at that. We did a big community event with the Boys and Girls Club where we did a giveaway of blankets and books, and we had all kinds of community agencies there. And we had over 200 200 families that came to that. So that was all kind of educating and recruiting. That first year in particular was hard to recruit. And just engaging your community leaders and having some events, reaching out to them, because they're not going to necessarily run to you until you're a little more established and the word is out there in their own community.
Something that I don't think that we've ever talked about in either of our interviews is what are the specific skills that that preschool teaches that readies kids for kindergarten? Is it social? Is it, educational? Like, what are the components that seem to be the most important?
I'm not an expert on preschool. I've been in the classroom a bit doing some volunteering, and it's so fun to be there too, and you're just overwhelmed with the skill the teachers have in dealing with that population. But there's a lot about the social skills and getting along with each other, and then there's motor skills. I remember one volunteer said that the teacher told him that this particular child didn't even know how to hold a pencil when they came to class. So motor skills and sensory skills, getting along with each other. And then they do a tremendous amount with alphabet and numbers and, vocabulary. It's really a mixed bag of all of it. And the activities are changing every 10 minutes. It almost makes you dizzy that how often they have to change the activity they're doing because of the attention span. But it's really fun to be in the classroom and observe it. I volunteered, and so did Gary Marsden, my co-chair, and they made gingerbread cookies. And we helped them paint the cookies, and we gave finger paints away, and we had 15 Rotarians come into the classroom and give those out, and then spend a couple hours with the kids. And it was whether they were painting or you were doing motor skills in the gym with them, or playing games with them, reading to them. It's just constant different activities to address all those different areas they need to grow and learn in. But you should have a preschool teacher tell you that.
Yeah.
How often are Rotarians going into the classroom and volunteering like that? Is it pretty common?
How often is it? Did you ask?
Yeah. Is it pretty common that you guys have a Rotarian?
No. It's something we really wanted to do more often, but that's an obstacle that I haven't mentioned. Is the ever since COVID and 9/11 and whatever, the rules about getting into the classroom, the security is really, really tight. And so we initially had a small group that went through the background checks and then filling out all the forms and whatever, but that has to be done every year. So it's been a challenge to get in the classroom. Now there's been some group events like giving the paints away, and there was another activity where we got in the classroom. where they kind of bent the rules and let us come in as a group, but not everyone had gone through all the background checks and stuff. But then there were a lot of rules about where we could be and under what supervision. So security is making it more difficult for us to get in the classroom itself. But those events where we can come in for a short time or do a community event is an opportunity too. We did the one community event that we had the 200 families at, and we had about 20 Rotarians there, and they were handing out pizza and they were playing kickball with them and blowing up balloons and engaging them while we were trying to entice the parents to learn more about preschool and sign the kids up. So that is a challenge too with the security in the school district. And I understand that's something that our society needs to do at this point.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. So one of the questions that I want to ask is regarding that, the connection point to the elementary schools and then the support that you get for the program from those school officials. What does that look like?
It is just wonderful. They just love us. They love the partnership.
They should.
And they bend over backwards to do whatever we can do. Yeah, they've just been wonderful. They just have everything they can do, they have done. They're just great partners. We've presented to the school board a couple times, and they're so grateful and so positive about it. Yeah, they love us coming in, and it's a great partnership.
Good.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, and so the feedback that you're getting, obviously you've shared that they enjoy it, but the feedback that they're giving you just in regards to like the statistics of the kids coming through the Preschool for Success program that before versus after. Yeah, let's talk.
Are they measuring that?
Yeah.
Like, are you guys measuring?
Yeah, like yeah.
Yeah, that's something we're just in the process of starting gathering that data. We're only in our third year, and the first year was, kind of rough. So that's, in fact, we were supposed to be meeting today, and it got postponed till next week. The assistant superintendent in the district is in charge of doing that, but they have research people, and they are gathering that data. And I hope by next fall we'll have some data on that. How do they compare to other kids that are starting kindergarten? We're going to do attendance. We're going to do academics. We're going to do social behaviors, discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the process of gathering that. It's only second year. So
yeah. Okay.
Do you hear from families or students? I mean, I guess they're so young, but just kind of anecdotally, as they've gone through the program or now in, kindergarten, first grade, and what, without the data behind it?
Yeah. Well, I know that we've put together a couple of videos, and we've interviewed parents on those videos. Not a lot of parents, but a couple parents on each video, and they've been extremely positive about it, and the difference they've seen in their children in their home life too as a result of preschool. So those videos would give you some parent input. But that is probably something that we'll also gather as we get the attendance and discipline and social skills gathering as we start on that this summer.
I'll post the video is available on the website.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check with John Bodette, but if they're not, we can sure make them available.
Yeah, if you send them over, I can. You can see the videos in the description if you're listening or watching.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check the webpage. There might be some on there, but I know we just did a more recent one, and we should probably get that on there.
Very cool. I'll post them when we post the show so people can check them out.
The other thing I really like is we've got tons of photos from those times that Rotarians have been engaging with the kids, and those are really fun to look at too.
Very cool.
So what's next? What's the next steps for you guys in terms of continuing to succeed and continuing to grow and continuing to gather funding and building?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of on our agenda for this meeting today that got postponed till next week is next year. We're in the process of fundraising for next year. We will be having, I think, 6 classrooms next year. And we'll be, the other big thing is working with Eric Putnam and other legislators to work on that legislative funding to increase the voluntary preschool funding. And then, of course, doing the data gathering and doing some gathering the data to show what kind of difference it's making. So those are our big goals for this next year.
Do you guys have any interactions with private preschools?
We have had some discussion with them. In fact, when we were looking for additional classrooms, we had some discussions with them on that. It hasn't worked out, but we have had discussions, especially there's a Somali preschool in our community. And, but the busing again was an issue.
Sure, because yeah, it seems like transportation. I remember it was in our last interview. It was the thing that you didn't see coming as the big hurdle, and then it just continues to be a big hurdle because of the cost. I mean, it's a huge cost and a logistical challenge.
Yeah, and I've often looked at other sites, like we had a church building that had a classroom, or actually 2 classrooms that they were interested in us using, and because they wanted to see them used. But there was an issue with our Somali population in being in a Christian church, so that was a challenge. So we've tried to do some partnering with private schools, and right now we're tried to. St. Cloud State has a preschool program, and again, we had to work out some issues there. So there's a possibility for that for the future, but it's real challenging to do that. I thought it would be easy, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to ask, so we talked about some of the, the speed bumps that you guys are encountering or have encountered over these last couple of years, but what are some of the big surprises, positive things? I mean, obviously the positive is that you're seeing this growth with the preschoolers as they go through each specific year leading into kindergarten. But what are some other things that kind of shocked you where you're like, oh, I was not expecting that, and it ultimately turned out to be a positive?
Well, I think when I've seen that community event we have, and we're going to have another one this spring, to see so many Rotarians there, and them engaging with the families and the children, and the exposure they had to these communities that they probably never would have had in their normal day-to-day career and social life. That it's really an eye-opener to them to see this element of our community. So that's been a real positive. And I think too, when they've gone into the classroom, and we had them go into the classroom and they participated with the kids, the joy of them spending that time with the kids, they really enjoyed it, and they'd come back and share it with the other Rotarians. So that's been a real positive, something, I didn't think about, but it's been a real positive result of the program. Learning more about that community and some of the biases we maybe had, losing those, and then really enjoying and getting an idea what it is, why it's important, and what's done in the preschool classroom. I remember Gary Marsner, my co-chair, when he went in and they built gingerbread men, and they had this song they sang about they sang when they were doing the gingerbread men. So he comes back to the Rotary meeting and he's singing the song to the whole Rotary. So,
well, I think
care to sing the song for our listeners?
You're fine.
I have to get Gary on to sing it. I don't remember saying, I'm going to build a gingerbread man. I don't know.
So cute though. It is. And you got that youthful kind of rejuvenation from being around the young kiddos. I'm sure that's fun. So the efforts too, just amongst our whole district, and just that initiative of each of the different clubs and their support for Preschool for Success. I'm sure that that's probably been impactful.
Yes, and this next step with the advocacy group that Eric Putnam is going to start, that would be really valuable to have some of the other clubs join that group, and so that we have a more statewide appeal for increased funding. So I'm hoping that some of your listeners will contact me or John Bodette or the governor and say that they're interested in that advocacy group. It would be great if we could have multiple clubs have representation on that, so legislators would hear from a wide spectrum of the state on the need for a preschool.
That was a good little plug.
Yeah.
Nice plug, Gayla.
You briefly touched on fundraising. Do you guys is it more donations, or is it, I know you got the big fundraiser with Summertime by Georgia. Where do you guys get the fundraising from, and what are you guys working on with that, and how can people help?
The last couple of years, we've had about $60,000 that we got from our foundation, which are funds that we've raised, and a lot of it through Summertime by George. And then we got $30,000 that was our goal in individual scholarships, $500 scholarships. So we took $200 or $50, whatever, from Rotarians and community members. Well, we surpassed that in the last couple of years. And then in addition, we got grants from businesses and organizations in our community. So the first couple of years, we surpassed our goals for fundraising. And we put $125,000 into the program both years. Now we're into our fourth year, and we haven't met our goal for next year's funding yet, but we're getting close. But basically scholarships, grants, and then the foundation giving us a chunk. So,
well, maybe talk a little bit about that. So as the program is maturing, are you seeing it challenging to kind of go to the same well over and over and over again? And is the challenge to find new organizations, new wells, new opportunities to continue to fundraise for you?
Yes, I think it is. We have gone to some of the same people and have been getting grants from some of the same groups. So it does become more of a challenge just to break out of that and find some new sources of revenue, right?
Well, and you talked a lot about sustainability on the back end of this project too. And, funding is going to be a big one of that. And it sounds like that you had said, some of this would be nice from the legislature, but let's just say we can't depend on that. How would that work for you? Like, where do you see that growth and that stability coming from if it isn't from the legislature?
Well, I think it's going to have to come from the community. That's my personal opinion. Because if the school district hasn't got the money from the state, it's going to have to come from the community if they put a value on it and see the value to their community economically and in graduation rates and achievement gap. Whether it's big corporations or small businesses or individuals, if it doesn't come from the state legislature, it's going to have to come from the community. But I think that's a lesser choice. Then you get the inequity from community to community. And that's not what we want. So,
well, and have you had anybody that has gone through the program that has given money back to it?
Not that I'm aware of.
That'd be an
Because
interesting
you're
one.
looking at a high need in poverty population.
Yeah.
So, no.
There's going to be challenges around something like that to be able to do some sort of give back. But
if we had 40 years like the Michigan study, you'd probably see people giving back.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
We're not there yet.
Well, yeah, your preschoolers are in second grade.
I know. I was going to say they've only had a couple years under their belt.
They're not
in
CEO of Best Buy or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, but that would be the hope and dream to see what an incredible success that would be to see individuals who have gone through the that first chunk of time with Preschool for Success and to see their growth.
An interesting story is Willie Jett, Commissioner of Education, new Commissioner of Education, former superintendent in St. Cloud. He was superintendent when we initiated this program, and he said that he was part of a similar program as a preschooler and was followed, his academic progress was followed throughout his high school years. And so he was the beneficiary of a program like this. And, he shared that with his school board. So what a fine example of that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Well, I guess a better way to frame my last question would be, how do you prepare the people that are going through your program to want to give back? You know what I mean? So like, how are you laying that groundwork for later? And, it sounds like it's going to be way later, but how do you lay that groundwork now? Like, how do you keep those students involved or engaged somehow? How do you stay engaged with them? Because you got to think that comes around at some point, right? Like whether it's their parents or if it's them.
Yeah.
Because maybe if somebody's in a bad spot now, they're not in a bad spot in 10 years, you just don't know. I mean, that's the goal of the program.
Necessarily be financially. I mean, there's other ways of giving back, such as, service and time.
Oh, that's
So there could be that component as well.
That definitely would be a great long-term goal. And, and look at Willie Jett,
Yeah, exactly. There's, or even just people being liaisons to communities that you're having trouble reach, right? Like, they go through the program, they can be, spokespeople for you. Yeah, connector. And then you think about like some of these challenges with facilities and other things and how those connections could be made that way. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been really, really proud of you, Gayla, and your organization. I mean, it's been I still to this day, it was one of my favorite episodes that we did early on, and just because of the impact.
Yeah. Well, and having kiddos that are,
I mean,
not too far removed from that preschool time frame, it's like, yeah, you can completely see why there's relevance and importance to having that under their belts and being able to go successfully into kindergarten. So
Well,
it is
thank
really
you.
wonderful.
We have a really wonderful Rotary Club, passionate, committed people that are really advocates of their community. So I'm proud to be a part of Rotary for 30 some years.
Yeah, we've had quite a few of your members on the show.
Yeah.
And that just speaks to just how much impact your club does within the district. So we thank you guys.
Yeah. And thank you for coming around as our guest for the second time and updating us on the progress of Preschool for Success. We loved having you on.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And
this was easy, wasn't it?
It was.
Well, and before we wrap up, Gayla, how can our listeners find out more about Preschool for Success?
Well, we have a St. Cloud Rotary webpage, and it's got lots of information about our preschool program. And of course, there's the 5950 district webpage that's got a lot of the resources that we put together. So both those are great resources. And, our club members, myself, my co-chair, John Bodette, we're all willing to share and answer questions. So feel free to contact us.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to drop contact information and those websites into the show notes for our listeners as well. So, well, thank you so much, Gayla. Again, it was an honor to have you on. And thank you to our listeners for learning a little bit more about Preschool for Success. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service. I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
That was we always have really nice guests, don't we?
Yeah, it's always nice.
St. Cloud guest.
It's always
Yeah.
good getting an update on some things because, Gayla was a returning guest. So it's kind of nice to hear how they've moved the needle or where they're continuing to see challenges. It's always nice. Like,
yeah, I mean, they overcame, there's some and more keep popping up, and
transportation keeps being that wily one, which makes sense. And
Yeah.
you know what? That's a lot of organizations. Like other nonprofits that I've encountered.
Yeah.
Transportation seems to be the one.
Yeah. Hopefully they, have success at the legislative level so it can spread. I was shocked to hear we're one of 18 or 20 some states that don't fund pre-K.
Yeah, it's pretty wild if you like all things considered what individuals know about Minnesota. I mean, shoot, we work with clients who relocate
Mhm.
to Minnesota for the school districts,
Yeah.
for the school system here because of how the education system is. And knowing, I mean, Gayla was like one of our first or second guests.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Top five, like the
She was early
first
on.
Yeah, early
five
on.
guests that we had on. And so
We were still polishing our craft.
yeah, but it to your point, it just never ceases to surprise me that like knowing that this is kind of a core foundational component to building on for education, why wouldn't we be
Yeah.
pouring more into it?
When she talked about the return on investment, wasn't it like $1 to every 17
Mhm.
invested?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably why we have one of the biggest
or
achievement gaps.
$17 to every dollar invested. So like
Yeah,
it's a
right.
17
Yeah.
to 1. Yeah.
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 I found it interesting too, like where they were talking, how they're running into like the scalability problem where like kind of the next level is big funding from the state.
Mhm.
And so that's, or I suppose if you could get a donor pool that's large enough to sustain it. But sustainability is the problem when it comes to that, right? So
Sure.
it's really interesting what it reminds me of too. And I like having return guests because, the pathway to greatness are small, excruciatingly painful steps
Yeah.
versus this like stratospheric,
Massive leap, right?
leap. And even the ones that do that, they plateau and
Mhm.
there's pain. There's so much pain and growth, especially like in that space
Yeah.
where there's no support or it's under supported, especially because the rest of it is so well supported. The rest of our school districts, our school program seems to be very robust and working well. So there's a preconceived notion problem. And then you're trying to reach an underserviced and underprivileged community.
Mhm.
So you go,
That has an achievement gap.
that has an achievement gap. So
Yeah.
you just see how difficult that is just on paper, let alone what I liked hearing in the update is we're struggling through this, but man, we're continuing to go. We love that we've seen it implemented on the district wide level.
Mhm.
Edina has been doing some things with it. I know other communities as well. And it's just slow, excruciatingly difficult steps, but it's just that continual movement.
Yeah. Well, and as
And-
we're kind of wrap this up, it sounds like we've got
Yeah.
some great investment in with the different Rotaries here
Yeah.
as well. So hats off to Gayla and Preschool for Success. And thank you for coming back on
Show
and
us the
sharing
model.
details. So
All right.
I'm your host, Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk,
And I'm Chad Larson.
It's time to stop searching.
and start serving.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.